Hey everyone, welcome back. I am so excited for tonight. We have our One More Chapter book club happening. I'm going to always give us a few moments, let everyone come on in. And tonight we are discussing The Lost Bookshop by Evie Woods. Hey Bethany, hey Jessica. You guys, get your books ready because, I'm going to give it just a few moments. You loved it. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to hear that. Hold a little bit of those thoughts. I'm going to, I just want everyone to see how you all felt too. So make sure you re-type your thoughts once everyone joins us too. I am so excited to discuss this book tonight. We're going to just give us all a few moments to settle on in here. Hey, Belle. Hey, Donna. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited for tonight's discussion. I want to make sure, too. Hey, Jackie. You guys, this book was, mind blown. I cannot wait. We had a lot of you guys registered this month, so I want to make sure we're all having that moment to come on in. Hey, Lilu. Yes, Lilu's goal was to finish this book, and I'm so excited to have her on. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to, let's slowly start to talk about this book. Now, I do want to preface this and say that there was so much there is so much to discuss with this book. There's a lot of intricacies into it, so it's going to be a crazy ride tonight, and we are all in this together. So let's just start off. I want to ask you all your overall feelings on this book. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was 5 stars. It was not what I was expecting. I am blown away by it. You know, it's an intense book. When I was making a family tree earlier, because I was I'm getting a little confused, and so I literally broke it all down to a family tree. So if anyone has any questions, I got you on that. But with this book, it was something that it's not just one of those books that you pick up and know what's going to happen, in my opinion. You were blown away too. You thought it was so good. Okay, this is a good start. I know Bethany mentioned earlier that she loved it too before everyone hopped on. I wanted to start with, after going over our overall feelings, kind of diving into a little bit about the plot twist, because this is, spoiler alert, I guess I should just give a whole spoiler alert for this live in the first place if you haven't read it yet. There must be, oh, Jessica, I'm going to give it 4 stars. A little bit of a slow start. Def had a lot going on at the end. That is a valid point. Cherry, the vault? Is that the Lost Bookshop? Wait, the vault. Oh, sorry. Bethany said, totally agree. Yes. Okay. When you say you thought it was a slow start, was there a certain point that really had you feeling like this is going to take off? What was that point? Because I could see at the beginning, I would say it was around that 200 mark when I was hooked and I could not put it down. But it did take a little bit to get there. So for me, it was that 200 spot. The other thing I want to also dive into is the significant plot twists. At the end, they referenced the item she gave her friend was left. Oh my goodness, yes, the manuscript. I actually don't think that there is a sequel. Yes, the sewing. You know what's funny? I actually thought that was just a sorry, I don't want to I'm trying to figure out the best way that my thought process is to because that is a very good point right there. And what's interesting was, let's just dive right in, you guys. What are we waiting for? When it came to that part of the book, the ending. Okay, we're going to start with the ending. When they put it in the vault, right? in my head, I actually thought that this was a real thing. But I guess it's not. Like, this is not a real thing in a vault. But I thought that it might be. And that was a part of this little mystery that I thought was really interesting. Because how did it get to the vault? We never really got that confirmation in the first place, right? Like, she gave it to Matthew, and then there was never that, and then she couldn't find it. So how do we actually know that it ended up in a vault? That sparks a really interesting question that I hadn't thought of. Huh. That's fascinating right there. I did not think about that before. Do you have any thoughts on how it actually got into the vault in the first place then? That also makes me think of the Matthew character in general, because he felt like a big part of the story. And I actually thought at one point that he was going to end up with her. So I read this on the TikTok live the other day. Oh, Lena said it's kind of a series. There's 3 books loosely connected to each other, but can be read alone. Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't think that the second book was actually like a sequel. Okay, so that makes sense. It's kind of like that Every Summer After book and One Golden Summer that we read the other month. That makes a lot of sense. That's exciting. Hey, Christy. And Patty, you also thought that they were going to end up together, right? I was a little disappointed by that in terms of I thought that there was going to be this big reuniting with them. But I was reading this on TikTok live the other night, and I literally had to take a moment and not start crying when, I'm not going to lie, my eyes teared up, when Wolf, that first time when he left, it broke my heart. That's a good point, Patty, that it made you sad to think he'd leave his family, so I'm glad that didn't happen. I guess I was a little confused if we were supposed to believe that he was still with that family, but I guess at the time, divorce wasn't really a thing, so he probably was. That's a good point. In my head, they were actually separated. So I guess that's that's a little tidbit right there to also keep in mind. Oh, well, that takes me a step back. Don't love that then. That's really, Oh, sorry, but going back to Wolf, I know we're jumping all over the place. There was so much to this book, you guys. We're going to do our best to like kind of stay together on the same page. So if anything gets confusing, just let me know. Yes, because I thought he was married. He doesn't talk about her though. I would agree. And I guess I want to take a moment too, because there was a lot of interesting relationships in this book in terms of, I think we can start with the male figure since that's kind of what we're talking about, because when it comes to the male figures in this book, there were so many different like reasons for them being there that I thought was interesting, that I hadn't thought of until like the end when I was really picking apart the book. And it also had me realize all these different parallels in terms of, honestly, I want to say like, the only word that's coming to mind is brilliance behind the author's story development. So I just want to break this down and to tell you what I'm talking about. I literally made that family tree, you guys, to break it all down because it was that many characters by the end. But there was Lyndon, who, that was my biggest plot twist. I actually did not see that coming. And so he had this interesting development where it was like, almost not this crazy development in a way. Like he just kind of remained this awful character throughout the book. And then at the end dropped this major information on Opaline. I mean, did anyone on here think that he was going to be the dad? I did not. I did not see that coming. And it made a lot more sense because there was a point when I was like, how is this going to connect? And it made no sense until that moment. Okay, so no one actually caught on this. Oh my gosh, wait, Belle, you caught on that he was... of course, Belle. There's always one person I feel like that catches on to that. That's a really impressive thing to catch on about. That blew my mind. It also made me really sad. He was questionable to you. Saw the bloodline with the mom. Yes. I feel like that was the most obvious obvious in quotation marks, of course, was the mom connection. Oh, also, hey, Leah, I didn't see one here. You thought that there was going to be a back war story about him. Yes. Hey, Spooky. Oh my gosh, you're so good. It was a little weird. He was so set on setting her up to be married, especially after she left home. So I agree with that. And so I did a little digging into like how or why this was happening, because he lost me a little bit with trying to get married, but then he also was this like famous war hero who apparently had a lot of money where he could be paying off the doctor. He could be having this lavish home with help around the house. But then at this same time, he had to marry her off to get paid. So I still don't really get why. That was a little bit like, I feel like he was doing it more of an ego and because he didn't want to have to deal with her. So he was trying to just sell her off. But then it like makes it even worse. Hey, Nakia, I didn't read this book, but is your next book on auto? Do you know? I will have to look into that. I'm announcing the book tomorrow, so I will get back to you on that. Okay, Nakia? Great question. And yes, Sherry, we will get back to that. I just want to stick with this for the moment, just because that is another crucial part that I really want to get to. So hold that thought if you don't mind. So yes, that with the brother, but also then it made me even more sad. Oh, that's a good, okay, we are coming back to that. Okay, Nakia, that is great to know. Thank you for sharing that. I will let you know as soon as possible, okay? Spooky loved the book. Yes. This also makes me want to talk to you guys a little bit about Opaline herself, because I don't even think, guys, there's so much to this book that we haven't even talked about Opaline yet. And this book had you all the feels, right? Opaline's story was so fascinating, and it had this connection that at first I was a little confused about. It did all come together in a way that at one point or another you could kind of picture. But when it came to Opaline herself, she was the ultimate protagonist in my opinion, because okay, sorry guys, I'm just gonna take a moment here. You had to take a deep breath after reading her part. That's how I feel like coming into this. I'm like, there is so much to talk about. So let's start with Opaline for a moment, because Opaline was like, of course, that ultimate protagonist, and she was this beautiful story of the time it was taking place, because this was not modern times, of course. And so taking a step back and looking at her, it was kind of crazy to see it all come together, because she really was paving her own path in a time when women were not doing that. They weren't even allowed to. They weren't allowed to have their own thoughts or opinions. I mean, her brother was trying to sell her out. And so, I guess her father at the end of the day. But there was something to be said about that. I was just going to say that strength, because when they put her into the asylum, I almost burst out into tears, because the scary part is to think about that time period when the men were given so much power and the women were just supposed to take it, but not for Opaline. I mean, we saw how it could have gone. She could have gotten sick. She could have gotten that pneumonia that Mary had. And that was so upsetting to see, exactly. And yet, Mary had this strength to also help push Opaline. And so she was this little side character, but she actually, I think at the end of the day, and I think Opaline would agree, she saved Opaline's life in there. Because without her, I don't think she would have had this sense of hope. And there was a point in the book when it mentions that, I think it was actually Martha who said I had to choose between hope or happiness. And that was something that was really interesting, and we got to see interconnected into that Opaline's idea of hope. You were getting mad at her story. You had to finish the book after yes. Also being the realization that she could end up like that. That for me was like the turning point in the story. That was when I literally could not put it down. I think I finished it that day. Because you get to see the story all come together in that point. Because all of a sudden it made sense. And it was really interesting to see that connection in how I did not know exactly how the author was going to bring it all together. And so being able to almost, I guess the word for me is like sewing the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like sewing the stories together. That right there was unbelievable. Because you had Opaline, you had Martha, which Martha and Opaline's story were so interconnected. And there was one little detail. And I did some digging because it was really bothering me. And I don't know why, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So I made a note of it. And there was a point in the story that said how it was on page 158. There was a mention of Martha Brown. And that she was they called her the maid for Bronte's family and their home at the parsonage. And this blew my mind. So, Martha Brown. At first, right there, I literally marked it off. And I was like, is this the same Martha? So I did some digging. This Martha is not the same Martha, but they are supposed to represent a parallel situation. So that was how much detail went into this. You had Martha Brown, and then you had the Martha Carla. No, what is Martha? I don't know Martha's last name. Martha, right? And so, yes. So it was this echoing of the past through Martha Brown. Through Martha. If that makes sense. And so, because then what made me really mind blown was that at the end, Martha says, if I am to be the custodian. And so when she said the custodian portion, I was like, oh, okay. So she's kind of considering she was coming to Madame Bowden's as the maid. And so was this Martha Brown back in the day. So she actually could have ended up taking that same path as Martha Brown. But the whole purpose of this story was to see that no, she is going to trailblaze and take her own path. She's going to figure this out. And so that was just another little detail that I don't know if any of you caught on to, but it was driving me crazy. So I did a little digging into it to find the answer. Which also brings me to Madame Bowden and my biggest question for you all tonight, which is, what's the deal with Madame Bowden? Is she real? Is she not real? I don't honestly know if there's supposed to be a definitive answer, because a part of me thinks that no, she can't be real. But then a part of me is like logically thinking, well, then who was paying Martha? Yes, I did too, Spooky, and we're going to get to that in a moment as well, because that right there is going to bring it all together even more. But I don't understand and so I'm curious if you guys thought if she was real or not. You loved her, but then I'm like, was she a ghost? Like a guardian angel. So that is a good point too, because that is also what Martha's mom said. She asked, oh, is she like your guardian angel? But Martha was getting paid. And what happened to the friends? Remember the ones that she invited at dinner? I honestly don't have the exact answer, because in my head, I think she's supposed to be this guardian angel. But then I guess maybe that's the magical part of it all, where we're not supposed to think too logically about it. They never saw her either. Then how did they get there in the first place? The cover-up with Shane was wild. Yes, she did show up for Martha. She was absolutely a guardian angel, whether she was real or not. But it was really interesting. But it was very, just a peculiar situation when you think too much into it. So I guess it's one of those things we're supposed to leave up to the magic of it all, right? But she really did meet her And the house was the curator of Madame B. Okay, first of all, love the nickname, Madame B. That's what we're calling her. Secondly, yes, she kind of shows up like the bookshop. And that one was fascinating to me. I just wanted to think because I also want to mention, I do want to go back and talk about the shame of it all. I just want to be careful with the words that we say on here, of course, because I know it can get a little funny, but I think we'll be okay for book club. But the shame of it all blew my mind. Because now that you mention it, I didn't actually think about the fact that she was Martha's guardian angel, no one could see, and yet she pushed Shane down the stairs. It has me thinking that it's just supposed to be this magical belief a little bit. She was helping her pave her own path. Yes. And I mean, this house in itself was number, 12 and a half? Like, it's not even supposed to be there in the first place. And yet, all these people keep showing up. There's Henry, there's Martha, there's Madame B. Whether or not she's really there, it doesn't matter at the end of the day because they were all there where they were meant to be. And there was that amazing thing at the end where Madame B writes the letter and writes how how I've been on a lot of different, or I've acted in a lot of different people's lives, but this was by far my favorite. She was definitely an angel that's bringing them, that takes part in all these different stories. I think that is a beautiful answer for that question. And also a great question. Jessica asked, if she wasn't real, how was the body moved? You know, yeah, I don't have an answer for that. That's fascinating. Don't have an answer for that, and I kind of like that. I like the magic of it. Yes, you read my mind, Bethany. Magic. Yes, the magic of, that's the answer, Donna. I like that answer. It was the magic of the house. And what's funny is that in all of these stories that we read, these houses are playing such a big character. And it's something I never realized, but I feel like in every book club that we've had so far, we are just talking about houses. And so that's just a funny little key point to this, that like homes play a huge part in these books. And I also thought that the house was its own character. Yes, it was spooky. The house really was its own character. But it's fascinating to me that it also brought Henry into it all. Because Henry also was this other main character in the story, right? And yet when I think about it, all I think about is Opaline and Martha. Me too, Jessica. I'd love to stay at a bread and breakfast that was based on the house. Yes. That sounds so amazing. With the tree in the basement, that tree played such a significance in the fact that, first of all, I thought that Henry's juxtaposition to it was hilarious because he's like, well, you weren't concerned when the tree was growing out of the basement? Like, you had no concerns that there was a problem with the foundation? That was so funny. But also, what about the random person who saw the inside of the house? I also don't think any of that was real. Now that we are talking more about it, what a good point. I mean, the tree, sure, but a tree delivering books? What a dream. I was a little thrown off, though, when I didn't, for some reason, because we never actually got a specific time frame for Martha's story, which I thought was really interesting. And so the fact that, like, Normal People was the book, or the first book that came up, I was a little like, wait, this is a recent timeline. And that's when I realized that they were switching. I don't know if anyone else felt that, but I feel like whenever there's, like, a dual timeline, if you're not aware of it right away, it takes you a moment, and then there's all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is not the same timeline. Was that just me? I don't know, but that normal people threw me off. I was not expecting it. I had to take a moment and was like, oh, 1921, we are not in 1921 anymore, because it also was a little different because, like Spooky mentioned, she kind of forgot all about the beginning, and that was another point. I forgot all about it. And when she wasn't real, also getting the tattoo. Wait, what do you mean by that, Jessica? But it was interesting that oh, wait, have you not read it, Spooky? Oh, for normal people. I see. That's so, oh my gosh, you'll have to tell me how it is. I forgot all about the prologue of this and that main story aspect until the end, like Spooky just mentioned. So I'm curious as to why you were also brought back to what time it was when she got a tattoo on her back. Yes. Me too. That made, yes. I was like, wait, whoa. Hold the phone. And I guess I'm a little confused as to, not confused, that's not the right word. Intrigued as to why when, I think that's part of the reason why the setup was a little confusing, if I'm being honest, is that it went prologue, but the prologue was like this story to introduce the story. Then it went into, I think it was Dublin, and then it went into the normal one. So that's a little bit of, I feel like that could have been a little stronger, but also that could have been a personal issue. And the manuscript was like, is this fiction? I'm not going to lie to you guys, I did look it up. I did have to see, is there actually a missing manuscript? I guess the world will never know. Which, there was this interesting part of it that you felt like, oh, that's a good point, Bethany. You felt like the beginning could have been shorter and then the ending could have been longer. That I think I could agree with. What was interesting is that the beginning, I was like, where is this going? I thought it was supposed to be this magical realism book. Is there any magic? And then the end, it felt like it wrapped up so fast. I was like, I could have a little bit more answers here. Yes, just like Jessica said, the end seemed rushed. Yeah, like the story was from Martha, like a biography. Yes. In a way, I don't think... That's an interesting point, Spooky. One I didn't think about. Is Martha telling this story, or is this... I guess in my head, I was reading it more as like this was a book about Martha, Henry, and Opaline, and then it was almost like this completely separate story in terms of the one that Martha was trying to tell in the beginning and the end. Right? I don't know. That was just one way I was interpreting it, rather than it... Anyway, yeah. Yes, you were reading it all about Martha. Exactly. Isn't that funny? Because at the end of the day, it was. And that's another key takeaway to this book that I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight, because, again, there was a lot of different themes throughout it. So I was trying to take a step back and be like, okay, what did I get from this? And the first thing that came to mind, I think one thing that is going to come to everyone's mind, was this idea of Lost. Because there was that ending and then there was like the beginning, right? So the beginning is all about how you have these three characters who are all on these different timelines. And in a way, they're all lost. You have Opaline trying to escape home and enter this new life alone, afraid, and really in a time when that wasn't happening. You had Martha, who was trying to escape Shane. And then you had Henry, who was also lost in terms of his why. Because he was the one that I feel like really, or I guess, to me, Opaline felt like she kind of had more of a purpose than Martha and Henry. And Martha and Henry's purposes ended up being one and the same, which I thought was interesting. And whereas Opaline, her purpose to me felt like it was this interwoven story to connect Martha and Henry. Does that make sense? Because there was this point in the book that I wrote down. And I just wanted to find what note I took for a moment, because this was how I kind of made sense of it all. Yes, okay. It was this feeling of, honestly, that historical parallels. Oh my gosh, yes, you have, write down, what were those, Spooky? But there was these parallels that we're seeing all this generational trauma in different ways. And I think one of the interesting parts of this had to be Martha, of course. And I want to dive into Martha's story because I know we just talked a lot about Opaline, a little bit of Henry, but I want to really dive into that Martha core of it all, because she had this story that was taken away from her because she didn't even get to know it. And that was not her fault, but it's almost like this silenced story from her past generations that prevented her from being able to know who she was. Because all of a sudden she has that discussion with her mom. And it's Martha's mom ended up being Rose, who was adopted, but it became this family secret because of the sketchiness behind it. And it's interesting how that is what then affects Martha. And it all starts back at the top as well with Opaline, because imagine being lied to that your daughter did not make it and she did this entire time. I thought that was... Spooky said, it appeared to me that men in particular seem to need to find a war... that men in particular seem to need a war to find meaning in what they already have. I would agree. That part right there was so interesting and made me go, ugh, you're not wrong. Kind of like the other one that said, it was Madam B, and she said, do men like you ever realize the hurt you cause flitting in and out of people's lives? No, I suppose not. That would require some sort of intellect. She had it locked. And the other part, like, you kind of wondered if she lived, because yes, I also thought so too, Belle. That one I did predict. That one was less wow to me. Yes, that Spooky. It didn't seem to matter how talented, intelligent, or independent a woman was. She was still seen as property of men to do as he pleases. That just made me, like, angry. And I feel like that was the point. And it was also funny to me that Lyndon in Opaline's story was kind of the same as Shane in Martha's story. So I think there's so many parallels that shows that, yes, the times change, but still things are the same. And you thought it was cozy until those situations. Yes. That really was honestly awful. Like, there's no other word for it. And the other part of this that at the same time I kind of loved was Wolf, because he was an unexpected character. And I know we touched on this a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure that we kind of came that full circle with some of them, because the ability for Opaline to literally stand there and say, I just met my soulmate and I'm never going to see him again, but I know he's out there, that broke me. That was the part that I read on live, and I literally had to take a moment and go, I need a minute. it was kind of nice she had someone, but also ugh, a man after enduring that. Who are you referring to? Oh, Patty made an interesting point. Yes. Okay. I also think Patty made a really good point here. I think that staying silent in the long run can cause more hurt than speaking your truth. And I think Martha's mom is a great example of that. I think that's a brilliant point there, Patty, because I actually think that that is exactly what Martha's mom came to that realization of. Because we didn't get this full confirmation in terms of why she stopped speaking. We just kind of know it had to do with that trauma of it all. And then when she speaks and Martha has this realization, I knew she could talk, it did have me thinking about then how long she hadn't been speaking. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we actually know the exact age that Martha's mom stopped speaking. But that was another example of that generational trauma that flows throughout. You loved his character. He just wanted it to help in his own way and fix what he could after that war. You know who he reminded me of? Gibbs from NCIS. I don't know. Maybe that's why I loved him so much. I do have this secret, cozy love of NCIS, and that's who he reminded me of. That's it. So many of these characters had profound stories. Yes. And Wolf, I was trying to take a moment to think, oh my gosh, you haven't seen that? Okay. My Gibbs reference on is going overhead, but things would have been different for Martha if she knew the actual story. Oh my gosh, you guys. You guys don't know my Gibb reference? What is going on here? And I think a part of us are supposed to wonder about if it would be different. And because a part of me was like, yeah, right? You know Gibbs. Thank you. You got me, Donna. Didn't Wolf not remind you of him in a little bit of a way? Like a fixer? Anyway. There was this, sorry, I was trying to form my thoughts. Because then it was like you had this lost story of woman being silenced over the years. Bethany said, Wolf just didn't impact me much. Okay. I don't know why. Sometimes these little characters really impact me. I don't know how many of you, I can't remember how many of you guys ended up reading our Unravel Me story, but it kind of reminds me of Penny and how much I ended up loving her, and everyone was like, girl, I don't think it was that big of a deal. And I'm like, I just really liked Penny. This is how I feel about Wolf. I guess sometimes those side characters for me really do it, and I don't know why. But, yeah, I know. I knew Spooky would get the reference. You're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. But there was this, I guess, fascination with the Emily Bronte of it all. What? Okay. You're not, Jessica, I get that. I hear you. Jessica said, for me, I was screaming, kick him out, girl. Do not trust a man after everything. Wait, you guys, that brings me to the other thought that I had, and I'm sure many of you had this thought, but for me, I was like, whoa. I think, okay, that's also the logical answer. I just am like, I love the hopeless romantic of it. I just thought it was so sweet, and like, finally, she found her home. Like, she felt like they were being called. It reminded me of that's it. Martha and Henry are the parallel of Wolf and Opaline. That's the parallel. So I guess that's another reason why I was like, girl, go for it. Because I know that you guys are going to be endgame. And I also, pictured like them walking off into the stained glass and it kind of being this storybook ending. I mean, yes. Spooky was 1921. In the worst kind of way. That has to be my answer for you. But I could totally see that. We had to stay a little realistic for the moment. Girl was trying to get married off. Or not trying to avoid, I mean. But did you guys catch the fact that Amrod was the spy? I just have to note. Did you guys note that? Because when the brother said little Opal. Oh, Patty, I don't think your comment went through. Patty, all I'm seeing for you was, or was I way off with that? And I'm doing my best, guys, to monitor all the comments. So if I ever do miss something and it's like important, let me know. But yes, Amrod was the spy for the brother. That I did not see coming. That was the third plot twist. There was really 3 plot twists for me in this book. Okay, maybe 4 in terms of the fact that like Madame B wasn't real. No, I guess that would be number 1. The second was Opaline's father, and the third was Amron. Oh. Patty, you just made a great point. You know what, Patty? Brilliant. Didn't even connect those dots. So then that makes it even, definitely not the norm, but it makes it more plausible. But yes, you didn't trust him either. Yes, me neither, but I did not expect him to be the spy. That took me for a loop. He really grinded my gears because he was just a snake. Yes, her actual... oh my goodness, yes. Lyndon being the dad was just disgusting. Oh my goodness. And then having those different spies, there was a moment when they were throwing in a lot of different characters, and I was like, whoa, who is this? Like, Mr. Ravel was a different spy, and then I kind of forgot he existed, and then he just came in, and I was like, whoa. Spooky was curious about the 20-year age gap. You know what? Didn't even think about it. Though, that was one detail that I didn't connect the dots, and I guess if you did, it would have been a little less of a shock for you. There was just so much little detail throughout the book that if you were to go back and reread it, I feel like it would have an entirely different shock factor. The only thing in the beginning that really did kind of make me see the connection that I thought was actually helpful was in the bookshop. In the house when these stairs said, I wrote it down, because I want to get the exact wording. It was, in a place called Lost, strange things are found. And I don't know. And okay, this is just like a little thing that I thought was really cool, was that in a place called Lost, strange things are found. Guess what page that was on? It was on 111. So I thought that was a little cute thing. Because the other thing I wanted to talk about that I thought was really amazing about this book was the idea of being lost. Because I think that's something that we've talked about a lot together throughout our different lives. And it's this feeling of we want to all make sure that we're not falling to that point where we're kind of feeling lost and a little stuck. And this book made me think about how nothing's ever truly lost. It's just waiting to be found. So even when we are going through those days and we're like, I don't know where I'm going, it also is this calming moment of like, you know what? I might be confused with where I'm going, but there is a spot that I'm going to. Jessica said, for me, feeling lost is the time for many opportunities. Wait, I love that. That's exactly what it's about. And it was the quote in this book. I love quotes, you guys, so I try to pull them out as much as I can. And it was like the big one at the end. Lost is not a hopeless place to be. It is a place of patience, of waiting. Lost does not mean gone forever. Lost is a bridge between worlds where the pain of our past can be transformed into power. You have always held the key to this special place, but now you are unready. Now you are ready to unlock the door. And that right there, I thought was such an amazing way for the author to kind of sum up Martha's story too. And it was that she's always had the power to discover this bookshop. But she needed to have that belief in herself, in her abilities, and she needed to really believe in the steps that she was taking. And it reminds me of this quote actually from, it's like Glinda the Good Witch. I think it's in our planner, that's why I know it. It says, "You've always had the power, my dear. You just had to believe it for yourself." And Opaline is the demonstration of that. And she always had this confidence in herself, in her belief. And it was something that I thought was such a stark contrast from Martha's story and Martha's mother as well, because I think that they would agree in the fact that they kind of were losing them. They did lose themselves. I mean, it came out in this, that they lost themselves. She couldn't read people anymore, or she couldn't read the person that she was falling in love with anymore because she lost herself along the way. And O was such a strong person. I love these nicknames, you guys. O was able to always have this kind of steadfast in her ability. She kind of just bulldozed through life. And I think that was such a contrast to the present tense that we were seeing with Martha. And I thought it was that was just a nice little difference in the two protagonists. Because at the end of the day, like, they were both the protagonists in this story, but very different characters that came together to pursue a similar journey. And this idea of this treehouse, this bookshop, I mean, basically, I pictured like this fun treehouse type of thing, even though I know it was in like this house. But the tree in itself with the roots was also so symbolic of everything, because I just thought of like the tree of life. And it's this place where if you're feeling lost and you need that direction, that you are going to be found. You're going to find that purpose. And Martha was such a perfect person. I think she was really the only one that could take over the bookshop, not just because of her connection with Opaline, but because of her ability to read people. And when I was taking a look back and thinking about why this end story, the epilogue, was so important, it was because we got to see why Martha was chosen for this bookshop. Because, in my opinion, this bookshop is only going to appear to those that I would say, like, that deems it worthy, but are really searching for it, or searching for something. And so you have this little boy who is, he was little, so it's hard to, see the fact that he was lost. But she knew what he needed, and she was able to read him and give him that magic book because his eyes popped up at Matt Fitzpatrick. And that right there just brought it full circle for me. And I was so happy with that ending. It took me a minute to be like, wait, why did his eyes light up at Matt? Because I forgot that Matt always wanted to be the magician. And to him, pursuing the bookshop, it never really felt like a dream of his. But he never really got the chance to pursue his dream. And so he was another character that was thrown in there. And I think a part of that reason was because she did need someone to give the sewing box to. But I think maybe if we dove deeper into why he was there in the first place, I think he was feeling lost as well. So that just made me think about how, because there were so many characters. I did not expect his ending either. I still am a little like, well, where did he put the sewing box? Which kind of brings me back to what Cherry was talking about. I know I told her to hold off for a moment because I wanted to just make sure we got there. But now I wanted to talk a little bit more about the sewing box and where it ended up. And a part of me thinks that it doesn't even matter. And I know that might sound crazy because, like, of course it matters. But I don't think it's having it that actually mattered in the first place. Because I think it tied in all these stories together. How big is that box? It's the size of a deck of cards, it said. Like a size of a playing card. Oh my gosh, Leah. Wait, I did not have that connection. You think the boy is Matthew's chance to redo a story and be less of a stuffy businessman. Wait, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that. Oh my goodness, I did not think of that. I love that. Wait, I'm so glad you said that. Patty said maybe he thought if she gave it to him with such urgency, he felt it was important enough to store. I would agree. And the reason why I did like the ending and how it really didn't matter where it ended up was because of the fact, I think it was like Henry or someone said it at the end that, or you guys quoted in the beginning of this live, and you said how it's now like someone else's story to find. And I think that's the overall point of it, if in a strange way. You know what I mean? So like, I want to think about how I want to phrase this, but all I can think of is like the lost and found, right? So we have this lost manuscript, and then it becomes, quote, found. Because it found its place. It connected Opaline, it connected Martha, and it connected Henry. So the point of it was not to be discovered for the world. It was to be discovered for these three individuals. And that was the beauty of it that I thought connected this idea of lost and found. And now it's on someone else's lost story. Does that make sense? That's what my interpretation of it. And that was the part of the magic of it that I loved. Because this, at the end of the day, was still a magical realism book. It was just interesting as to how it was gone about. Because we had the magical books, and it was this beautiful story of... Yes, it linked them. Great summary, Donna. Yes. It was this also, like, beautiful story of books, which is perfect, of course, for a book club. But there's such a magic with literature. And I think this just did such a great job of conveying that, and how a book is a story in itself, right? Like, it tells you this story, but then within that book, there is even a deeper story behind it. And as I'm saying that, it's funny because it's like, that's why I love to do these author spotlights every other month, because a author is writing this book, and they have their own story about how they're writing it, and yet they're also writing a story on the pages, and that is what this is. Like, this is a Lost Bookshop in a way I just think is so beautiful. And I love how Kay casually talked about the tree growing, right? And then they said when Henry said, nothing can sound as crazy as seeing a bookshop, or whatever that statement was. You know which one I'm talking about? Or seeing a tree grow in the basement, or seeing a bookshop that's not really there. I thought that was hilarious. There was humor throughout them, and it was in such like a dorky way, mainly because of Henry and his awkwardness, that I kind of related to. Right? Like, it was so funny, and yet sad all at the same time. I don't know, it was really interesting. It was just like a fascinating story to me. Right? The other quote that I thought was really cool was, in terms of for Madam B, when she said, conformity is a death sentence. No, my dear, you must embrace what makes you stand out. That's what they despise. It's the circle in this life blaming for children. Sorry, it's the circle in this life blaming children for being who they are because we were blamed and our parents before us. If you're not harming anyone, why try to change who you are? And I thought that was also a great quote. I love a good quote, you guys. And it was just another example of how this was trying to tell all of us to pursue our own path. no matter what it looks like. Spooky said, Leah said, Henry was funny for me. I had such bad secondhand embarrassment for him. Me too. I think we all need a Mrs. B in our life. You're not wrong. There was just so much to pick apart about this book. So many fascinating characters. And so much to learn from each of them. Like, everyone had their own purpose in this story. Whether it was being the main character in this story or being a character in someone else's life that really brought it all together. And that's what I thought was really fascinating. I loved how it all came together in the end because I'm not going to lie, I wasn't sure at one point. When they threw in the other Martha, I put the book down and I said, who is Martha? And then I couldn't Google it because I didn't want answers, but there was so many good characters to love and hate. And sorry about that. It gave me the audio error. There were so many good characters to love and hate, and I just love how they evolved. Yes. Guys, are we even going to talk about the fact that all of a sudden Lyndon just, boom? Like, I actually didn't see that coming. I feel like maybe I could have, but I did not see that coming. And his was interesting because he actually had zero character development. He was just a horrible human being. And then he was gone. He drops his mega mic bomb and then just goes away. Yes. He could not put his ego to the side. And I think that's the lesson that we're supposed to also learn from him is that he couldn't acknowledge it. He couldn't live with the thought of anyone viewing him as less than, which was so prominent in that time. The shame, even though he had no shame. Like, for someone who had zero shame about what he was doing, he clearly had some shame. He had some feeling about it. And he is literally Shane, and they both were ended. Fascinating to think about that now. They were both taken out. Something to be said about that. Right? Like, just saying. Let me see. Is there anything we didn't cover yet, you guys? He didn't want others in the outside world to see his true character. Even though he was nicknamed the Reaper, we all knew his character from the start. Whether they knew him or not, they knew his character. The circle of life. Wait, stop, Belle. Stop. That's horrible. I love it. Yeah, he was an interesting character to have in there. And their purposes were also interesting because they kind of just they honestly pushed the story along. He seemed to be a proud man, but not really. Yeah. That one's complicated. That one I feel like I'm trying to even think about him. Like, I guess he just didn't want to deal with it. And yet, everyone else is left to deal with it. But that I thought was a very telling situation in the end. You think his ego is hurt, not ashamed. He has no shame. He has zero shame. Weak man. You guys, I like this energy. We're all on the same page about this. Yes. Such a good point, Leah. Leah, dropping some good points tonight. That's such a good point. I'm trying to think about if there's anything else that we didn't get to discuss tonight. Oh, you know what? There was one other quote that I think you all will appreciate. And that was on page 134 when they were discussing the female aspect of it all. Yet it struck me that being a woman was akin to a performance, with its cues and lines that had to be learned. And then it goes on to say, well, I don't want to do that. And I thought that that was another great sentence right there. There were so many good lines throughout this story in terms of that female aspect, in terms of life's takeaway. I just think overall, I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was really thought-provoking. Yes, a little complicated at times, I won't deny that. But I think that's why it worked. It screams woman empowerment. You know what's funny though? It's like when you're reading it, I didn't actually feel like I was being screamed woman empowerment in a nice way. Like it felt like it fit the story so naturally without having to be like thrown in there. And that was just a telling of how the story was written. I really enjoyed the writing style. I do love a dual POV though, or a different timeline one. It was a great book club book. Yes. Yes. Also, same, Jessica. I mean, if you weren't rooting for these women, who are you? It was the perfect book club book. Definitely one I would recommend for anyone. Oh, you got stronger by reading it. Yes. Wait, that's amazing. That's beautiful. There were so many good takeaways. And that's the sign of a good book right there. This book sat on your shelf for a while, and I'm so glad I finally picked it up. Wait, me too. Oh my goodness, yes. Because I know I had a lot of new faces to this book club tonight, you guys, and I want to thank you all so much. I really appreciate you guys showing up, challenging yourself to read a book every month. These are some great discussions, and I absolutely can't wait to tell you guys tomorrow about whose October spotlight it is. Because October will be a author spotlight, and so we will actually have the author on with us in October to discuss the writing style, the perspective, all of that. Yes, you did do it as a buddy read. Oh my, I love that. It was on so many people's TBRs list. I'm glad you guys got to do it. I'll be announcing all of that tomorrow, Shauna, so stay tuned. I'll be making the event tomorrow as well. I'll be posting about it. I'll tell you guys on live tomorrow morning. So stay tuned, you guys. And again, will it be a spooky book for October? You'll have to wait and see. Yes. I love it. Thank you guys once again for joining the One More Chapter Book Club, and stay tuned for tomorrow to see who we have on next. And I will see you all in a little bit. Yay, I'm so happy you guys to hear that. I love that. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you so, so much. Bye, everyone.